Okay, we're recording. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully Chelsea will join us soon. This was week number 9. Becoming Conflict Competent Leaders, chapter 6 in our book. Our outside reading was Heifetz this week. Guide to Leaders. This is a seminal work. I really like this. I really like this article. Let me see if I can find it now. Did it go away? I had it loaded here. Yeah, there it is. And what was illustrative for this week is adaptive change versus technical change. I won't go too deeply into it, but when we talked last week about, I used Gardner Webb as an example. Gardner Webb has to be involved in an adaptive change to meet current market conditions. It's not a technical change. It's an adaptive change. Hopefully you read through this article and you know the difference. And again, I hope to see that in today's presentations. So I talked to Dr. Hamilton to follow up with what we talked about last time when we were together. And he agrees that for perusal, we need to do fewer articles, but because we're doing much more in depth. And so we'll make that adjustment going forward. Any questions on where we are today? Today, of course, we are at case study 26, Diggins Reinhold Plastics. This was more than just a technical change. This was an adaptive change to try to keep up with global market conditions. They had to try to merge 2 companies together. A lot of issues, a lot of problems. So I'm excited to see what you come up with today. All right, who's going to start us off this morning?
We will.
So who's going to be the host?
Tia.
Tia's going to be the host. Okay. All right. Manage participants. Tia, I'm going to make Tia the host. Tia, it'll ask you if you want to claim the host. Let me turn my video off. Sometimes that helps. I'll turn it right back on. Stop video.
I'm looking. It still says I'm viewing Dr. Lamb's.
All right. Do you have the little dashboard?
I don't see. Is it at the bottom?
It should it should be at the bottom.
Does it say share?
Yes.
This will stop other screen sharing. Do you want? Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. And
there we go.
okay.
All right. I'm back.
And there we go. All right. All right, James, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm ready.
All right.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, Diggins Tubing and Plastics Incorporated decided to merge with Reinhold Plastics Company. Excuse me, get the screen right. Decided to merge with Reinhold Plastic Company, a German-based plastics manufacturer, to increase its power internationally. To facilitate the smooth transition of the operation, the CEO of Diggins hires 2 consulting professionals under the supervision of the company's vice president. A year after the merger we are presented with the analytical data that reveals the progress and evaluation of the Diggins Reinhold Plastics Incorporated's employees. Here's my screen. Here's the structure. At top, you have the CEO. Then you have the VP of Sales, VP Accounting and Finance, VP of Operations. Then under that, you have the U.S. sales team, international sales. Then you have U.S. operations and the international operations. This slide here basically just is showing who supports and who opposes the merger based on their position with the sales personnel, the clerical support personnel, the line operational personnel, the technical personnel, and management. Here's basically the slide that shows the merger issues with it. Show which issue has the strongest opposition and the most support.
Okay, and for the central problem, I think it was clear that it was ineffective leadership or management during the merger with a poor implementation plan, because overall it was like they didn't have a plan in place for the merger. And when we think about that, it goes back to the leadership, because who was supposed to design the plan? How was it supposed to get started? So because of the ineffective leadership, there was a poor implementation plan. So that's what we thought the central problem was for this case. And then when we look at the secondary problems, because there was a lot of them, but we tried to pin down a few, inadequate preparation for the merger, again, no effective plan, lack of effective communication throughout the organizations, between the two organizations, especially during the merger, and then there were no clear job descriptions. So we're going back to the organizational structure.
Rational bureaucracy, very incomplete.
Yes.
We went back and looked at that organizational chart that they had. I mean, how ridiculous was that?
Exactly.
I mean, that took 30 seconds and just basically had a few blocks, but didn't have any. That's not a rational bureaucratic structure. That was kind of a joke that you would try to look at your organization in that simplistic manner. Didn't have any real structure to their organization, and also inadequate preparation. But from the consultant's point of view, this reminds me of a sign that I saw in a hardware store recently that offered different services, and it said plumbing, $80 an hour. If you tried to fix it first, $100 an hour. They waited a year after the merger. Now, did they plan to wait a year, or do you think they waited a year because they tried it themselves for a year and it was a complete disaster, and then they called the consultant? Which of those you think happened?
They waited.
We waited a year.
They waited a year, and when it didn't work, then they called the consultant. Is that important, again, like last time we did a case, is that important to know from the consultant's point of view? Last time we found out that they had tried the change before, and it had been unsuccessful, and then they called you. Because this is the life of the consultant. They tried it before, it didn't work, they called you. And so it's a retread program, more like this. They tried the merger themselves with no real clear idea of an organizational structure. And then when it didn't work, they called you.
Yes.
That's illustrative. That's important to know. They assumed from Heifetz's article, they assumed that this was a technical change. Was this actually a technical change? No.
No.
This was an adaptive or fundamental change.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Alternate solutions. 1, create a change management plan for merger integration. Develop and effectively communicate new mission and vision of new company. Streamline new divisions with clear leader and or supervisor. Clearly define personnel positions and develop plan to phase out positions personnel no longer needed. Define new positions with a clear job description.
All right, preferred solutions. As we looked at, as we discussed and we looked at what the preferred solution would be, leadership creates a change management plan for the merger integration. The risk to preferred solution, fear of change for those who have been okay with how things have been. Of course, they weren't used to change. They were fearful. They had no idea what was going on. Some of them flew, some of them got sick, some of them got notices from the doctor, saying that they were stressed out, blah, 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 blah. Lost the productivity while focusing on the change plan because they were so worried about their job. They lost their knack for productivity. Some people will want to leave, so they will have high turnover and they will need to be replaced. And then stress levels will likely be high for everyone, which as we read the case study, we saw that the stress level was already high.
Okay, so with our action plan, of course, this is at the point where we are now. If we could tell them to go back and do it over, we can start over. But first thing we would want them to do is an organizational culture survey or assessment, like what's in Denison, and look at the 4 areas of mission involvement, consistency, and adaptability, so they can know what areas they need to focus on to really get the buy-in. Then we would have them complete a persuasion campaign to actually get the buy-in based on the areas that they found of need. Part of this would be convincing employees that change is necessary. So looking at using the unfreeze, change, freeze method, and uncover those competing interests for why people don't want to change. Debunking any assumptions that people have of what they think the change is going to bring. And then we'd want them to frame the preliminary plan, gather feedback, and finalize it. And as they're doing this, they're going to need to manage those moods that Tracy was talking about with people, the feelings that they're having, and over-communicate and reinforce the guidelines as they go. Then the last piece of their implementation plan would be to determine the new vision and mission, and they need to involve employees in this. And they really need to, rather than having 2 old vision and missions and trying to put the 2 together, they're now a new company, so they need to think as one. Then once they have their vision and their mission in place, developing new organizational goals and strategies, and setting target dates for the review, and redesigning the organizational structure to best meet those goals and strategies, and kind of thinking start from scratch type thing. And it's hard for organizations to merge, especially if you've got similar positions as we saw in the org chart, to be able to try to create a whole new division that is going to substitute what was there previously. So they'll really need to focus on defining roles and the chain of command, and then review progress of their change management plan at set intervals. And as they do that, just overall communicate constantly with staff as they go to make sure that everybody is clear on where they are in the process, until they feel like they are through the entire change management plan, feel that they're fully integrated, and then they can change their movement forward as they are one new company or no longer considering themselves a merged company. And that is it.
Okay. All right.
All right, I just do stop share
Yes.
for the next group. Okay. Did I do that right?
Okay.
You did great, Tia.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. All right. If you will,
Haha. Okay.
I think Tracy's sharing now. So Tracy, if you will stop share.
Oh, really?
Yes, Tracy, it's the next group's turn. It's not your turn. We're done.
Hey, now what I do?
You present.
No, what did I do? Jackie. Do I just click on share so it can stop turning so it's green?
Click on the share button. All right, now
I
we're
did.
Jackie. All right. So
Am I good?
let me reclaim the host.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know I did that.
All right. We're cycling through everybody here. All right, who's going to go next?
Okay. Just hit the share.
Who's going to go next?
Yeah. Keisha, Chelsea, and Jackie.
All right, whose screen we're going to view?
Jackie.
All right. All right, Jackie's now the host, and so you can share.
Okay.
We're watching your screen, so if you will share your desktop.
Can you all see that?
Nope.
All right. I'm sorry, friends. I don't know how I get out of here.
Okay. So if you'll go to your dashboard now and go to share, and when you click on share, if you will select your desktop, it'll show us your screen. Let me stop my video.
Okay.
Really helps. There we go. It just takes a minute. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
Good morning. I hope that you all can hear me well. It says that my bandwidth is low. Can you all hear me?
Barely.
Wow.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Well, the background, it says, and I'll go over this quickly because we've already gotten some of the background. It says 1 year ago, Diggins Tubing and Plastics merged with Reinhold Plastics. Reinhold was a world leader in technological innovation. Diggins' strength was in superior quality of their production process and being recognized for its best practices in the industry. Diggins' CEO Edward Jenkins was the driving force behind the merger. The organizational structure for the newly merged Diggins-Reinhold was configured according to functions similar to the structure of Diggins. The merger positioned the company as a global company with operations in the US, Europe, and Asia. Jackie, can you click?
Okay. I didn't hear that. What now?
Jackie, can you change the slide?
I already changed it to the central problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's something going on my bandwidth. I need to move. Hold on for me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Let me see if I get closer to my router, if it would help at all. Can you all hear me better now?
I can hear you now. You're not going in and out anymore.
Okay, great. So we decided that the central problem was the overuse of positional power by leadership, which caused a lack of trust and resistance in the organization. And we came about this problem because we felt that people were very discouraged and upset that they had the consultants coming in, and the consultants were the one who were communicating with them the details about the mergers. So therefore, there was a huge sense of distrust. So some of the quotes that I found that supported this type of problem were that it's not enough for leaders to come up with new and innovative strategies. They also need to exemplify the simple truth that people are more likely to trust the plan if they trust the leader. So there was a lack of trust within the leadership because of the way they went about the process of the merger. Another quote that I found that supported this was that organizations will never achieve top speed unless CEOs know how to get, and I can't see what's behind that, I'm sorry, know how to generate leadership influence and use it to supplement their authority. We felt that the CEOs used their authority to make the decision, implement the plan. There wasn't significant buy-in from anyone else, which is why the plan was having severe difficulty.
All right, let me stop you right there. All right, to summarize this slide, can somebody tell me the technical terms that we use for this phenomenon here? Do you remember transactional versus transformational?
Yeah,
That's
this was
what we're talking
transaction.
about here.
Right.
Transactional is when you use your positional power versus transformational when you use your power of persuasion and personality to inspire and motivate people.
Right.
See, when you're trying to make a technical change, positional power is all you need. When you're trying to make an adaptive change or a cultural change, you have to have transitional, you have to use transitional leadership, power of persuasion, motivation. So the central problem, as both of you have identified, or as we go back to our HIFITS article this week, our central problem here in this is the folks who were in leadership thought this was simply a technical change. We'll take these people who have the technology and these people who have the production, we'll simply put it together. They thought that was clearly just a technical change, when in fact it was not a technical change at all. Technical change just requires transactional power. It was actually an adaptive change or a cultural change that requires transformational leadership or power. So that is, and so that's transactional versus transformational. That's how this whole thing got started down the wrong path. That's correct.
So the secondary problems that we want to highlight were because of the central problem was that there was partial commitment. You have to clearly define the specific value that will be created from the merger. There was poor buy-in and poor top-down communication. Employees were not adequately included or informed, which caused rumors, anxieties, dissension, absenteeism, and decreased work quality and performance. There was also a lack of shared vision. You get out of a plan what you put in it. If you're going to take the time to do it right. Create a unified culture with concrete and concise norms.
Some alternative solutions we came up with was number one, update, revise, and communicate job descriptions. Have managers trained and knowledgeable about the merger details and incorporate a new vision and mission. Also have managers acting as cheerleaders within their teams to get everyone on board. I think it's important that they communicate to their teams how they will fit how they will each fit within the new and improved organization. Not really knowing that definitely caused a lot of conflict within the organization, just with that lack of communication. So being able to have managers, you know, do better with their communications within their teams will hopefully alleviate some of that tension and just lack of not knowing, not being in the know. Another alternative solution, have Vice President Jenkins put his vision of international expansion in writing and via video and share that with the entire organization. Again, a large part of the issue was people just did not know what the vision was. People felt out of the loop. So being able to have him have this in writing, his vision in writing and in video to share within the organization. And the preferred solution that we came up with was to develop an effective communication plan to deliver merger details and information directly to those 1,200 employees who will be affected. And the risk to the preferred solution, even with putting an effective communication plan in place, not all internal conflicts may be resolved, and it may actually become more evident that you just don't have, that some employees are not on the right bus, and that some people are not a good fit for the organization. So with the preferred solution being put in place, it may result in some turnover.
Okay, so some of the recommendations, I don't have to read my phone because it keeps getting cut off right there. But one of the recommendations is leadership must be involved every step of the way. As CEO, you must be directly involved to meet with teams to assure that progression is happening and deadlines are met. Get organized for the task ahead. A structured and sequenced plan must be in place to make the transition as smooth as possible. The leader will assemble a transition team and sub-teams, have a plan to bridge cultures, and establish an avenue for employee feedback. So one of our recommendations is to make sure you know the 5 critical merger issues: time, top down and bottom up focus, identity, communication, duality. So with each one of these, we'll explain a little bit as we go along, but with time, I'll explain that in a few minutes about the small period of time that you have to try to get people on board. Top down, bottom up, make sure you get your people, everyone involved, not just top level management. The identity is basically your core values. Be sure that you communicate out. And the duality is basically how you're going to do it. The 2 things, your identity, which is your culture, and your method in which you're going to get it done. So our action plan for the implementation will be timing, communication, and shared vision. If you can work these 3 things out, we think that you can have a successful merger plan. So by timing, one of the studies that we found, it says in 30 days, you need to create a new culture of engagement. And some studies that we researched said that 60 to 80% of all mergers fail when there's a delay in people involvement. You have to get people involved. You can't just send people in to ask questions, because that is very fearful for people. The second part is to create a new identity. You're merging 2 organizations together, so you got to come together and find out what your third culture is going to be, what you're going to have as a plan. And the last one, let me pull that up. The last one is to attention needs to be to the human factor. Be sure that you engage employees, roles and responsibilities are clear. And in one of our perusal articles, they talked about the dice factor. And so we'll talk about that later whenever we're talking about, when some of the fellas were bowling, they were talking about how some of the plans were not working according to what the top management thought. So you can put the dice factor into that. So this is our first phase, and this is getting people engaged in the first 30 days. And I don't have to read these to you, but this is in one of our articles as well. These are the 4 phases of persuasion campaign. It's very hard sometimes to change people's mindset. So this has been a proven way to help get your people on board within those first 30 days. The next phase is articulating a vision and purpose, and we really feel like this is the most important thing. Core ideology is the character of the organization, and they said you have to be authentic because you can't be fake with what's important to you. So that's what core values are. It's what's important to you on the inside of the organization. The company will have to decide the values that they hold to be true to them, and it depends on their environment. And I'm still in the top part of this circle. Your core purpose, you have to know what is the reason for your being. And so in one of the articles, they gave 2 examples. One thing for like Walt Disney World, a core value of Walt Disney is no cynicism and a nurturing, wholesome American values. And another example, they had Nordstrom's, and their core value is service to customers above all else, never being satisfied. Same example for Walt Disney, but this is your core purpose, your reason for being. Walt Disney, their reason for being is to make people happy. And for Walmart, that was another example. Their purpose is to give ordinary folk the chance to buy the same things as rich people. So, wait a minute, because I can't see that bottom and I'm gonna have to pull this up. So the visionary companies often realize their goals more about authentic process of let's try a lot of stuff and keep what works. Their success lies in building the strength of their organization as their primary way of building the future. And so that's that bottom part, the 10-30 year, which I had never heard of this until this article, big, hairy, audacious goals. So you need to be audacious and know exactly what you're looking to reach. Okay, the third is the human factor. You involve employees in the decision making. We found 2 visuals, top down as opposed to bottom up. The purpose of structure, which you need a structure, is not to control but to delegate. Leaders make self-managed organizations. The right leaders will make organizations thrive and appear to be self-managed. And this is one of the last things. What I brought in was the DICE factor apart, and it kind of went with your merger plan. When one of the guys that were bowling and they said that the projects were not going as planned, and I don't remember this, but I'm sure if they don't go as planned, you have a loss of money. So it's just the importance of leaders. You can't just send people out to do stuff and not have a checks and balances. So the DICE factor is the duration, time between project reviews, integrity, which goes back to your communication, having people in the right places, people that are capable of their project teams. Everyone needs to be committed to the same core values, and then effort. Everyone needs to put in the same effort. And when we read an article about, it was in also Perusal, this DICE factor, they completed a study in 1994, and this is a good way to decide whether your strategies will be successful or not. It predicts your outcomes. And at the end of the day, at the end of the program, this is what we're hoping to happen. That is the dynamic model to create organizational change. Involvement is very important in the beginning, and engagement. In the core center, you have to talk, communicate, you have to trust your people, you have to have a sense of urgency. Your methodologies, how are you going to get things done? What are the best practices to get those things done? Learning through leadership, evaluation, and at the end, your renewal. And these were all of our references. We looked up a lot of stuff to try to get to the bottom of the problem and to solve it. And that's it.
All right, great. All right. Tell me how well the consultant group did when they came in, when they signed on to help lead this merger a year after the merger had been done. Tell me about how well the consulting group did. Where's Sarah? Sarah aspires to be a consultant.
Yeah, well, they did not do well.
Not too good.
No,
Tell me why they didn't do too. Tell me why they didn't do well.
Communication. I mean, clearly when they come in and they're kind of dealing with certain people, but not everybody's aware of what their role is, they look like the bad guys coming in to make all these changes. And so if they had gotten feedback from the beginning on, hey, we're here to help, and gotten from top to bottom, bottom to top, kind of like Jackie was talking about, getting all the communication pieces together, they might have gotten buy-in more, so that when they came back and made recommendations, they would look like just a helper versus we're coming in to quote unquote fix things, which would then make all the workers feel, well, they're just here to, help leadership get rid of my job type thing.
Yeah. And why do you think that? Obviously that's what everybody thought.
Yeah.
And they made one critical mistake. Now, I'm holding you accountable for something that you haven't read yet that we'll introduce to you next semester. But the critical mistake that they made, to amplify Sarah's point, is when they came in, rather than starting a process like you folks have outlined this morning, they didn't look at they came in and started interviews and started gathering data. They looked at personnel files. Do you remember that part of the case study? What was the very first thing that they did when they came in?
I can't remember.
Yeah, they studied personnel records and made observations.
There you go. Now, so they didn't start out on the right foot. They didn't look at the core values, the core ideology. They didn't talk to the leadership about, those kinds of things. They didn't do any kind of a cultural audit of the place. They went straight to personnel. So now you can tell me that this is not about my job if I'm an employee, but what have you shown me?
Yeah, and they're recording in great detail performance. So they're basically
They went straight to the job, didn't they?
Yeah.
When you come in, you say, but Dale, you have to in a merger because you can't keep everybody. As a consultant, you don't start with performance. You don't start with personnel records. You start with staffing.
Right.
Yep.
You start with staffing. How many people do we need? Which goes back to our core competencies, our ideology. We look at job satisfaction. We look at working. We go through that process that we went through last week when you started your strategic plan. We start with that as a consultant group. The last thing that we look at is personnel. That's the last thing. But if we start there, will we ever get trust or buy-in from the employees if we start with personnel?
No.
No. You're lost as a consultant. You failed before you even got started. That's a fatal mistake. Next semester, we're going to have a book by Royce, R-O-Y-C-E, on program evaluation. And that's basically what you're doing as a consultant. When you walk in, you better do a program evaluation to start with to know what you got. Before you start offering fixes and trying to, earn your money, so to speak, you better do a program evaluation. And Royce is very clear, even in chapter 1, like the 3rd page of chapter 1. You don't start with personnel. You start with staffing. In a case like this, how many people are we going to need? That goes back to that lack of an organizational structure. They don't even know. It goes back to the lack of organizational structure. Your organizational structure would define for you how many people we're going to need in the end. But when we start with personnel, the trust factor goes out the window as a consultant. When we're trying to do change, when we're trying to affect a change here, if we go for the jobs at the very beginning, you can tell me what's important to you, but you've shown me by coming in and asking for personnel and performance records. So now I understand, this is all about my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about our vision or our mission or our profitability or where we're going to go or how we're going to lead change into the future, how we're going to stay viable as a company. Oh, no, this is only about my job. You've shown me that. You can tell me all these wonderful things and try to be a transformational leader and inspire and motivate me, but it's hard to do that when I realize right away this was only about my job. So the consultant made a fatal error to begin with on this. You folks have defined the processes that you would need to go through, but unfortunately, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to do this as the consultant in this case, because you made this fatal error. You stepped in it to begin with. Again, we look at the organizational structure, which is part of this cultural audit that we do to begin with. You know, your core ideology. Are you authentic? Are you doing what you say you're going to do? We talked about that last time we were together about colleges. They all claim to be, you know, that we're trying to, you know, provide a quality education, but in fact, you know, there's 4 actual different ideologies. We talked about academic excellence. We talked about customer service. We talked about the client experience. And we talked about a patronage organization that's just an economic engine for its community. And so those shape the outcomes. They determine the outcomes. So part of all of what we're talking about here is when you walk in as a consultant, you've got to do those. You've got to do that cultural audit. You've got to try to figure out the culture of the organization. You've got to look at satisfaction. You've got to look at working conditions. You've got to look at vision, mission, values, stated versus actual. You've got to do SWOT analysis. But when you start in a situation, the last thing you ask for is personnel records, not the first thing. You figure out how many we need on, how many seats need to be on the bus before we start figuring out who needs to be on that bus. That's the rookie mistake that you make as a consultant. Oh, see what you're looking for when you do that is a shortcut. Oh, what we'll do is we'll just let all the low performers go and then we'll be good to go as an organization. No, it doesn't. It's never that neat and easy. You may have to let some of your high performers go because duplication of services. When you merge 2 companies together, you can't keep everybody that you've got. There's an economy of scale that kicks in. We may not need 8 buyers. We only need, you know, that we got 4 from each company. We may not need but 6 now. Well, they might all be great. That's not the point. You can't get confused by personnel. Just confuses you. It also displays a lack of trust, and so it will prevent you from being able to affect change if you tell them up front, this is only about your job, and you tell them that by asking for personnel records. Don't care what you actually tell them. What you show them is it's only about the job. So that was the rookie mistake here with the consulting firm. Now, you can say, but Dale, how'd they know that? Well, this is one of those does. If things had been going well a year in, they wouldn't have called you. The only reason they attempted to do this on their own. And when it failed miserably, they called you. You got to know that when they called you, things weren't going well, and this wasn't going to be easy. That you had to, that obviously there was already a lot of distrust, or they wouldn't have called you. It wasn't like they called you and said, we're thinking about doing a merger here. No, they called you and said, we merged these companies a year ago and it's not doing well. Especially in cases like that, you do not start with personnel. Because as from the little vignettes that they had, the bowling alley and the ladies' lunch and those things, you saw, what did you see that permeated all the different groups? A lack of trust. A lack of trust. That's what you're walking into. And now you have fanned those flames of distrust by asking for personnel records. You've shown them what's important. You can tell them this is all, you know, you can try to motivate them and try to lead them and inspire them and do all that, but what do they know down deep? No, this is only about jobs. So it's illustrative to know what you're walking into as a consultant, but it's also, you need to understand that you can make some very critical mistakes early on that will prevent you from having success in the end, no matter how sound your your practice is, all the things that you want to do with these folks. There's some critical mistakes that you make up front. Again, Royce points out in a program evaluation, the worst thing you can do is look at personnel. You need to look at staff. All right, questions you have for me? What have I missed?
Since I wasn't in class last 2 weeks, I wanted to find out about the 3 assignments, the 3 projects that we have to do. Do we have to present them all at one time?
You will present them in the last weekend. And, I think the group decided that when you went on, you would present all 3 of them at once. Was that what the group decided?
Yes.
I think I'm missing something. I thought the first time we met, we were going to do the personal change project that last Sunday.
Right. That's what I thought as well.
So when we meet again, you're going to present all 3 of your projects. And we're going to, you got Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
And you're going to present your, all 3. Now, if you want, whatever format that you want to do them in is fine with me. If you want to do them by rounds, that's fine. And then so that we get to your personal project on Sunday, or you can, when it's your time, you can do all 3. It's up to you.
All right. So on Saturday, we're going to present the cultural change project and the strategic leadership project. And then on Sunday, we're doing the personal change project.
If that's the way if that's the way y'all want to do that.
Okay. I think I was just confused because I just thought we were submitting the other ones and just presenting the personal change project. So I think I must have missed something.
No.
Okay, I must have missed something the first class.
I need to reclaim the host here.
Maybe I did too.
Let me reclaim the host and come back. Okay. I need to okay, I'm the host again, and you need to stop share. Let's see, Tracy, I'm on your screen now. You need to stop share.
Did I do it?
All right, let's see. All right, I'm back. All right, so let's look here. Here. All right. All right. All right, so here are the 4 things that you have to present. Milestone 5, cultural change project, strategic leadership, final project, and personal change project. Those are the 4 presentations that you have. Now, the cultural change project, usually that's just an oral report. It's just extemporaneous. You just tell us where you are and what you're doing. Of course, you have to submit a written one to me, but I don't expect a PowerPoint or any of those. You can just tell us about that one.
Wait, you said you don't expect a PowerPoint for?
No, not for your milestone 5. That's just an oral report. We talked about that earlier. Just tell me where you are on that one.
Wait, did you just say, you said cultural change though? There's only one.
No, milestone 5. I haven't spoke to the others yet. On milestone 5, you have to give me a written one, but you need to share an oral report with the group as to where you are. You need to, and that encompasses giving us background on what your consultancy is and how it's going and what you're doing, and then what you're doing for your milestone 5. What you're doing in milestone 5. Then you have 3 projects where you have a presentation: your cultural change project, your strategic leadership final project, and your personal change project. Those again, normally folks have a PowerPoint with those. They don't have to be long and involved.
How long are we talking? Because this group's pretty long-winded.
Well, that's what I've allowed 2 days.
Okay.
We've got 7 people and we've got 4 things, so that's why I said you've got a couple hours each. How you split that up? So there's 7 of you. That's 14 hours, and that's that's the maximum for the 2 days that we're together. Let's see, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 14 hours. That's 9 to 4 on 2 days. That's how I've calculated this. You've got 2 hours each. Now, how you want to split that whether you want to do these in rounds and have 30 minutes each for your rounds, or whether you want to take your full 2 hours and do all 4 of yours at once, that's up to you. I thought we'd decided that you would just do all 4 of them at one time, or we can do them in rounds. I don't care, but this allows us so that we're out by 4 o'clock on Sunday. And if people don't take their full 2 hours, we'll be out how much sooner that is than that. But I've allotted 2 hours for each of you for these 4 projects.
So the cultural change project, the strategic leadership final project, and the personal change project, each should be written in a short PowerPoint.
Yes, yes, because you got to turn that in. Yeah, you got to turn that in.
We got to turn in the written, not the PowerPoint.
Right. You got to turn in the written. Remember, these are not tremendously long. As I told you before, 1.5 pages, 2 pages. I'm not expecting War and Peace here. Jackie's already turned in her personal change project, and it was about a 1.25 pages, I think. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for. And if you want to do how do you best communicate your ideas and your information? Most people do it in the PowerPoint. Some people do Prizzies. Some people, write on the board. The kind of the standard practice for these, when it says project, is you do a short PowerPoint, and that's just to clarify your points, just like you've done here today. Not as involved as these, but with the big ideas on your PowerPoints. That's what most folks do. But again, you need, when we come back together for our last weekend, you need to have all these things, and whether we do them in 30-minute blocks or whether we give you the whole time block, you need to come in prepared to do these things. Again, you've got to write out milestone 5 for me, but I prefer that you do that one extemporaneously, that you sit down and in a discussion format, and you discuss what you've been doing, and you share that with the group in an extemporaneous format. It's got to be longer than a 2-minute elevator speech, but that's what we're looking for in that one. Can you communicate with others what you're doing? These other 3, will give you the opportunity to have a PowerPoint, which helps bring your point across. But sometimes you don't get to have a PowerPoint. Sometimes you have to be able to walk in and communicate with others without that visual aid. So this this weekend is not only about the content, it's about the process. I'm interested in the content of your ideas and the work that you've done, but also how you can convey that with others. I mean, if you don't have those skills, you can't make it as a consultant. You've got to be able to communicate not only through visual aids, PowerPoints, Prizzies, or whatever, but you must have the power of persuasion as well. And so this is kind of your final exam. You know, how well have you done? How well are you doing? How well are you progressing in the process of this program, that you're able to share ideas and communicate information through multiple vehicles, I guess, for lack of a more enlightened term. So that's what I'm looking for. And we've been practicing through our case studies all semester. It's not like I'm asking you to do this cold. That's part of why we do these case studies this way, is that we're prepping, we're planning, we're preparing, we're taking steps to get us to that last weekend where you step out and all of a sudden it's you now. It's a process. All right. Other questions? All right, so let's look at our schedule. Today's the 27th. We'll meet back again in 2 weeks for our final case study. And then you'll have the whole month be working on your own and getting your presentations together. That's not by accident. There's nothing in between the last case study and that last time that we get together. I want at least 4 weeks there for you to prepare all those things. And then when we get together that last weekend in December, you'll have 2 hours for your 4 projects. And so think about it, what format you want to do, and we can talk about it in 2 weeks when we're back on together.
Okay.
So just think about, y'all might want to discuss it when you're doing your case studies. Think about how you want to approach that last weekend.
Will do.
Sounds good to me. All right. Anything else for the good of the group?
No, I'm good.
All right. Very good work today. Excellent presentations. Yeah, I think you all hit on the things that you needed to do in this one. So this one went well. I think this one was a little more clear cut. We're adding a few pieces every time, and we'll add a few more for next time. All right, we made it in an hour today. Excellent job. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Everybody,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Good week.
Thank you.
Okay.